Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So the new Battlegrounds meta is about to start, and therefore we need to talk about the potential MVPs and champions to kind of pay attention to. First things first, let's break down the meta. So the offensive boosts are the same as they are currently in the Victory Track and the Gladiator Circuit. Basically, the main aspect of it being that Saga attackers gain this dormant virus that does improve your critical damage rating, as well as allow you to inflict a degen on the opponent. It is quite important to note that this degen is passive and it counts towards this Polka power node, which is going to be one of the more important aspects of the new meta. The two defensive nodes, we have Polka power, so basically the attacker gains no power from landing or receiving attacks. Instead, they are granted 12% of bar power per second while the defender is suffering from a damaging effect. This does include passive effects. Additionally, you can still gain power via sources like Mystic Dispersion or external power gain. Then, we do have Ebb and Flow Intercept, which makes this meta very hard, because the defender has a protection reducing all the damage by 60%, and you need to intercept in order to remove that protection. By doing so, you will also gain a Fury passive, increasing your attack rating by 40% for 12 seconds. But here's the kicker. When the Fury expires, protection returns, and all the debuffs on the defender are purified. It is super important to note that at the beginning of the fight, all the debuffs from the defender are also purified, and that will affect a handful of champions, most namely Nico, because on attack, effectively you do not get to start with the buff immunity on the opponent, because that's a debuff that gets purified at the beginning of the fight. So she is not as effective in this meta as she normally would be. She's still usable though, and obviously she's still a defender, but it is hindering her quite a bit. Then we do have Power Start 1 to help some champions who have the dot effects on their level 1 to be viable in this meta effectively and kind of speed it up a little bit. I do like that touch here. And then, let's take a look. First of all the Saga champions, as I explained before, are viable options. So even if the champions themselves do not have dot in their base kit, like for instance, the Maker, or Shang-Chi, or Stealthy, they're crazy good. Actually, Stealthy I do need to highlight at the very end, because he's going to be crazy good for this meta, because his ability to pause the Fury effects on him works on the Ebb and Flow Intercept node as well, so effectively can just intercept once and then maintain a 40% damage boost. So Stealthy is going to be crazy good. But again, Lumitrix is a viable option for this meta, because it's quite easy to intercept with him and easy access to dots, and just about every single champion here, if you do have them, will work even if they otherwise wouldn't. Just to put it out there. Right, that said, let's move on. So first, let's take a look at some of the skill champions. Kate Bishop's making a comeback. Believe it or not, there are two very, very good reasons for that. Number one, it is super easy to get an intercept and super safe. So you do not need to risk messing that up. You just dash back at the beginning and parry, and you have your intercept. Second thing is, when you do drop your level 1, that 40% Fury will lock in and increase your cold snap damage. And she basically does very well in this meta, even as a 6-star. Moving further, Okoye is still obviously going to do crazy good, even though she does have to deal with Ebb and Flow Intercept node, but she accesses dots immediately. And when hers get purified, you can start reapplying them, obviously, so there are kind of quirks in her finishing ability, but she does function very well. Moving on, Nick Fury, obviously we're going to be present. He does have access to bleed, and he's still always going to be a defender. Then we do have Mole Man, who's still going to work. His level 1 does have access to shock if opponents bleed immune. He's a tactic champion, so he plays a degen, and he also does have the access to bleed, so he's going to do well. Stealthy, as I mentioned before, is going to be the MVP. In the tech class, some champions to note, Solwark is going to be a crazy good defender, and that is largely to do with the fact that most of his counters don't really work well. For instance, somebody like Thanos is borderline impossible to use. because he can't get any dots on you, and there's just very few counters left. So Solvar is going to be very dangerous, and in the pinch situation, you can also use him offensively because he does have access to Cold Snap in addition to his access to the degen as a tactic champion, so he will work. Then moving on, we do have the Maker, again, mainly as a tactic champion, and also because there are virtually no Captain Britain counters that function well. Then we do have Stackhand Spider-Man, and Stackhand Spider-Man doesn't gain power, but he doesn't really care for it, because you build up the poise charges, you drop your combos, and then you drop your level 1, and then you go into Relic, and then you drop another combo, and you're done. So Stackhand Spider-Man is still going to be an important part of this meta for sure. Then we do have Sentinel, access to 2 different kinds of dots. Initially, shock on his heavy attacks, and additionally later on Incinerate on his level 2s. He's a bit finicky to use, but he's also obviously a viable defender with his trip immunities to bleed, poison, and cold snap. So not too bad at all. And also the lack of proper defensive, offensive counters to him. There aren't that many from the Cosmic Class that would typically annihilate him. Arcade is kind of like a sleeper pick on defense that I want to pay give attention to, because he does have access to a ton of dot effects, and even though, you know, he's not the fastest, he will be able to actually, you know, do some of the fights. But also in the defense, he accesses quite a few immunities with his pre-fights. So he's immune to Incinerate, immune to Poison, and immune to Shock. So it's not bad at all. If you do have ranked up Arcade already, I do recommend trying him out. Offensively, we do have Shuri. Again, Shuri, the cool thing about Shuri is that she can convert her shocks into passives quite quickly, and that is exactly what you want to do, especially once you have the 40% Fury, because then you do not need to worry about her shocks getting purified, and you're going to be consistently gaining power, which is going to be like fairly easy, straightforward fight. She's not going to be the fastest still, but she's going to be one of the techs that you can use fairly freely. Then in the Mutant class, there are a couple of champions that stand above all else. First of all, Onslaught is crazy good for this, namely because he has the passive dot. So, you know, when the Ebb and Flow Intercept comes back, Purification doesn't really affect him, and the 40% attack bonus on the level 2 is going to do the job quite fine for him. The next champion is Captain Britain. I think just about the best defender in this meta. Also partly because most of her counters do not work, partly because she's just, you know, kind of like peaking as a defender, and even if opponents do take her, it typically does take time. And also offensively, she's viable in this meta because she's a tactic champion. Then moving on, this lady is either auto draft or auto ban, because she's obviously offensively capable in this meta as well. She's a tactic champion, and on defense, like, what is the best way to explain it? She's significantly bigger menace than she ever was, because you do have the reverse controls to contend with, in addition to the fact that you have to land an intercept, and that is not easy to execute at all. So be afraid of Jean Grey. Be afraid of Jean Grey for sure in this meta. Now, another note, Dust is a solid pick because of her trip immunities to bleed, poison, and shock, and then also her being a tactic champion, so she would remain her role as a dual threat. So that is quite nice. Moving on, Deadpool X-Force with the 40% Fury and his Spulblood mechanic. Especially, okay, so all attacks bleed US opponents that purify, cleanse, or use an LMD to remove these bleed are inflicted with the passive bleed. So this would affect Ebb and Flow Purification on his bleed as well. So you do inflict 40% more potent bleeds, and then they can get converted into the passives, and especially if you do get a quick intercept straight after that, that can result in a heap loads of damage very, very fast. Moving on, Rhino. Now, this is a real defensive menace MVP type situation because there are hardly any great champions against him that work in this meta. And even if they do, it typically is quite slow because in between Ebb and Flow purifying the debuffs and then you needing to re-intercept him, in between his unstoppable that you have to deal with and his physical resistance, one underrated aspect of him is also obviously the fact that he inflicts you with a ton of debuffs, and therefore you will do less damage, but also he has that ability to reduce incoming bleed effects by 75%. And yeah, there aren't that many options that can do well with him. I think Kate is probably the best option, but yeah, he's just not easy to take down in this meta at all. As a 6-star Ascended, he was one of my MVPs in the off-season testing, so be wary of fat rhinos in this meta. Moving on, we have Human Torch, mainly, again, because of his passive no flames, them not getting purified, and you consistently getting that power. So yeah, he does quite well. We do have Spider-Woman, because she's a tactic champion, and that, you know, works out effectively just fine for her, and she's one of the science champions that still puts in a ton of work, and obviously her defensive prowess is still there, so she does well. And also she can kind of interact with the node itself to kind of like pause it or delay it for quite a long time with her 30% ability accuracy reduction. Eyebomb is a tactic defender, so he has degen, he has poison, he will do well. Tigra from the Mystic class is like the best option probably. Even her, you know, you do need to know exactly how to play around opponents' abilities and get that intercept before you do want to throw the level 2, but she does function better than just about most. In my testing, Battle by Night did very well also compared to the most Mystics, so he was very solid. Kushala is serviceable still. She's not great, she's not as good as she normally would be, but she can do fight still reasonably fine. Then we have Destroyer as one of the defensive MVPs as well because of his immunity to slow and obviously his immunities to poison and bleed. And your need to intercept him basically, so he actually worked out as quite a nasty defender as well. Then moving further, we have Dracula. In theory, listen up, I know he sucks, I know, but hardly anybody has. In theory, he's perfect for this meta. He is. He should be better than normal, in fact, because his entire playstyle is about constant intercept, so you should be able to get that 40% fury bonus there on your damage, and then obviously you have constant degen on the opponent the entire time, so you would be getting power instantly. I don't know how well it will work out, but in theory it should be good. Who else do we have here? Another champion that I did not mention, Shatra. Shatra can work in this meta. Because you do start with 1 bar power, so effectively land in a handful of combos, and then throw your level 1, and then start charging a heavy attack. So she's usable, she's not ideal, but then again, many of the Mystic champions will struggle. Again, Nico is usable, but not ideal, because her level 2 poisons would get purified as well eventually. Her passives wouldn't, but again, she is missing that buff immunity at the beginning of the fight, and again throughout the fight it would also carry on getting purified. So she's not great, but you obviously her defensive value kind of makes you add her. And moving on in the Cosmic class, one of the better Cosmic options now is Venom. He's not tactic, but whatever bleeds he's going to do quite well against, and yeah, he's decently solid here. Then we do have Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix obviously has a defensive prowess, but also offensively she is viable in this meta because of that passive no flame and the power start 1. Because you can start the fight with, you know, dropping a combo, activating your level 1, and then you can start generating power, and then effectively the opponent is going to have that passive no flame on at any and all times, plus her own level 1 power gain. So basically, what I'm saying is she works. Then we do have Hyperion. Hyperion is one of the better Cosmic options here because of his access to Incinerate and, you know, natural power gain as well. Then we do have Caroline Dean, and Caroline Dean in this meta, it's a bit quirky because the fights will start slower than normal because your combat power rate effectively is nil. So you do need to rely on her power gain to get to a level 2. But once you have done that and you activate your first level 2, you do have your natural power gain, plus you do have the Incinerate and therefore Polka power, and that doesn't get purified, so she's still usable in this meta for sure. And again, special notice was given that stealthy from the beginning of the video. So that is the situation with the upcoming meta. And it's also like big outline from my own personal deck. I do not have stealth with Spider-Man and a few other champions. like Dracula, but for the most part, the champions that are listed out here are also the ones that I did end up testing out and including in my own deck. Obviously, there are other champs that will work, especially when you look at the Saga champions. If you do have access to these at high rank, and they are suited for battlegrounds, many of them would probably do quite well. Like, you know, with Vision is probably decent. Yelena is going to be obviously in my deck for defense, but she's going to do probably solid work offensively as well. Silver Samurai could be decent for this. Shang-Chi could still work for sure. Then we do have somebody like Lumitrix. He's viable in my opinion. Gentle is definitely viable too. Cassandra Nova should be working reasonably well. Black Cat should be quite good for this meta. Bastion should work. Baron Zemo is also usable, I'd say. And there we go. I will be streaming the Battlegrounds, I think, as soon as it goes live, and later I'll be doing the event quest. But for now, hope you guys found this video useful, and I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all